Welcome to the Pestle, reviewing and breaking down movies to look for insights into the movie-making process. Hosted by Revenge. The next person to cut me off in traffic is going to get a hot slice of foot-in-the-ass pizza. Let's dim the lights and start the show.
Welcome everybody to the Pestle. Today's show is brought to you by Cerithium Oil, delivering fossil fuels to your front door, whether you ordered it or not. Dive into Cerithium Oil. Welcome everybody to the Pestle. I am Wes.
And I am Todd.
And this is a show where we like to discuss films. And so we like to break it apart, look at it from all avenues, from acting to directing to writing, editing, every side of it. I really let this intro roll quite a long time on this one.
Yeah, you did. I noticed. Fine. It's good.
Yeah. We can dive right in. We have a long day ahead. So what are we going to cover today, man?
Yeah, today we're covering No Time to Die, the new Bond film. So if you haven't seen it, pause this episode, go watch it. It's in theaters now.
Yeah, we'll touch on a few things. We'll discuss the resourcefulness of Bond. We'll also talk about summoning characters and red herrings, as well as we'll chew on the future of the James Bond series and other such stuff and things and stuff.
And I'm going to botch all these names, but here we go. So a synopsis of the film. James Bond has left active service. His peace is short-lived when Felix Leiter and an old friend from the CIA turns up asking for help, leading Bond onto the trail of a mysterious villain armed with dangerous new technology. Directed by Cary Joji Fukunaga. Screenplay by Neal Purvis and Robert Wade and Cary Joji Fukunaga and Phoebe Waller-Bridge. Cinematography by Linus Sandgren, starring Daniel Craig as James Bond, Lea Seydoux as Madeleine, sure, why not? Jeffrey Wright as Felix, Ana de Armas as Paloma, Lashonda Lynch as 007 Nomi, Lisa-Dorah Sonnet as Mathilde, Rami Malek as Lyutsifer, Safin, sure. Christoph Waltz as Blofeld and Ralph Fiennes as M.
Rafe Fiennes.
Yeah. What?
Rafe Fiennes.
Rafe.
Yep.
That's how you spell that?
Yep.
And Rafe Fiennes as M.
Why not?
Just making the shit up now. People just making up. How do you spell green? W9.
We used to be able to get into a room with the enemy. Now they're just floating in the ether.
When her secret finds its way out, it'll be the death of you.
Oh my God. Target enough people.
And the people become the weapon.
Who is he?
James, you don't know what this is?
James Bond, licensed to kill, in love with Madeleine Swan. I could be speaking to my own reflection. Only your skills die with your body. And life is all about leaving something behind, isn't it?
Come on, Bond. Where the hell are you?
Okay.
Oh, doggy. So,
Yeah.
I have a litany of questions that I will pepper you with throughout the show. Yay or nay, man? This is the last Daniel Craig. Are you glad to see him go? Was this the way for him to go out? How'd you feel?
Yay. Big yay for me. I don't even care what anybody thinks. This is my favorite Bond film. I loved it. I loved every bit of it. Okay. Let me just say there are a couple of things that you have to dismiss because it's Bond. Let's just put it out there, right? So Bond, there's going to be a million shots fired. Not a one is going to hit him.
Right.
You just have to understand that that's going to happen. You have to go in there knowing that's going to happen. It's happened since the 70s, whenever it's first 60s, and it's just always going to be that way, right? So if you have that understanding, then you can get away with a lot. But there are so many costs that he pays. Like I think Daniel Craig. Like I said, I don't care what anybody thinks. I think Daniel Craig is the best Bond ever. There is no one that can touch him. Everyone else has been a version of this guy, but this guy is the Bond he plays from the very beginning has been the impetus of what I feel like this character is supposed to be. He's strong when he needs to be. He's delicate when he needs to be. He's funny when he needs to be. He's brutal when he needs to be. Like all the right moments. Like this character has been written for Daniel Craig in just a perfect way, and he's played it in a perfect way. But the stakes, and how do you make the stakes higher? He's always has to save the world, always, right? Yeah. But in this case, it's so awesome because he has to save the world basically from itself, in a way, and the sacrifices that have to be made along the way are fantastic. The things that we know as viewers that he doesn't know are really cool and frustrating at times, but understandable still. And the additions, right? Like his daughter, is just a little wrinkle, and we're told, no, that's not your daughter, and we're thinking, wait, but she has blue eyes like him, and like, is it Rami Malek's character's daughter? Is it, whatever, Safin's daughter? But then we learn that it is, and it's so good. Felix dies, like to pay the price, right? Of he pays the price of bringing what's his name? The bad guy.
Blofeld.
Blofeld, thank you. He pays the price of bringing Blofeld in, right? With his life. Like there are prices that have to be paid. And then basically handing the baton over to the new 00, because they don't like each other at first, and then he just hands it over to her, right? He dies at the end. Fucking yes. There's a massive cost. Finally, we have a moment where the cost to saving the world is your life for this guy who you cannot kill. And yet, and who kills him? M.
Interesting point. Yeah, I
kills
didn't even
him.
think about that.
I mean, he kills himself, right? He tells him to launch.
It's a sacrifice, but he pushes the button.
But M has and he says it in the movie, I've dedicated my life to the protection of this country. And the whole thing is his fault. All of this is M's fault. The virus at the beginning,
Heracles.
Heracles itself was his own creation. So for him to be the one to end it all was just I just love it. I thought it was brilliant. I thought I totally bought their love. I thought that it was really well acted. And how do you say her name? Lea Seydoux? It's just fantastic. And then having Ana de Armas in it just for a little bit was really, really great. And at first I thought, man, I would really like her to come back at some point, or like to have a little bit more of her. I mean, she's beautiful, but she's also really awesome at action stuff. I totally bought that. But really I thought it was perfect because all it does is open the world of the double O's a little bit bigger. It just makes it a little bit bigger. Like there are more out there that you don't see. Here's one that you're going to get 10 minutes of and then no more. That's it. And there's more, so it just opens it up just a little bit. I thought that they did a really great job of bringing characters when they needed to and not when they didn't. I mean, we have Rami Malek as the main bad guy, but we don't have him in the movie very much. He's really, he's a he is the focal point, but we don't see too much of him. We see him a little bit at the beginning, a little bit in the middle, and a little bit at the end. It's more about developing his relationship and his love with Madeleine, and his missing of Madeleine, and his longing for his regret for putting her on the train. We're like with these characters and their relationship so much more than it is about how bad the bad guy is. We get a little bit of exposition when he's holding the little girl and Daniel Craig is on his knees in front of him. A little bit of that, but and in a few other points too, like when he's in the safe room with Madeleine earlier and he's finding out a bunch of stuff. But for the most part, it's just it develops their relationship really well throughout the whole thing.
Were you able to did you have any problems with Safin, I guess? Like for me, I struggled quite a bit with his motivation. Like he has this monologue about people want oblivion and so the world needs to evolve, right? And therefore he needs to kill large swaths of people to make the world better. I don't know. He felt almost like an aside. Like he was just a very, to me, thinly built villain with strong visual characteristics and interesting like things about him. But in terms of his motivation and what he was trying to accomplish, that felt very afterthought to me, and I just didn't follow it. I saw this twice, and I struggled to really understand what the deal with him was really about. I don't know if you had a better read on that, or if you were just like, it's fine, he's just a bad guy and he's a means to an end.
A little bit of both. A little bit of both. I totally agree with you. So when he's giving his exposition for his purpose, right, holding the little girl, that's I think when the part that you're having the issue with, right, where he says something. The first thing he says I identify with, but then when he talks about people want oblivion, I didn't really get that. But the part before that I got, where that basically people want to be told how to live their lives, and I think a lot of people are like that, right? Like, we wake up, we take our kids to school, we go to work, we pick them up, we make them dinner, we go to bed, we do the whole thing again the next day. And that is what society tells us to do. So that's what we do, right? And we just, and there is some comfort in the structure of that. Whatever that structure is told by society it should be, there's comfort in knowing I'm doing the right thing by doing this thing that society is saying that I should do. And so I totally agree with that. Does that mean he needs to destroy all of society? Not necessarily, but it is a semi-true statement. I feel like there's some truth behind that. I would have bought it more had it been just revenge on it's revenge at a grand scale when it didn't need to be, So yeah, I totally get that. But on the opposite side of that, I don't really even care. Yeah. It doesn't matter, because the point is that there, and we've seen it in, look at characters like Joker, where you just want to see the world burn. Some guys just want to see the world burn. And I don't need it's a Bond movie, so I don't need a full explanation of why you want to see the world burn necessarily. I just know that you do. And we can't let that happen. It doesn't even matter. Like, you could just never tell me why, and maybe it would have been better if they had not even said why. He's just like, I just don't even care, so I guess my point is that, like, maybe there have been other villains in other Bonds that have had better motivation, but I feel like the character development and the story and the visuals and my journey through this film were more complete than any other Bond that I had seen. So I guess that's why I'm letting that go a little bit, because I've already had really developed bad guys in other Bond films. The last couple, but I haven't had the journey that I feel like I had, the emotional journey in this film. And I'm really curious at what you think now.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't disagree with any of that. I think it's always nice to understand why we're fighting. And I think, ironically, that's one of the gifts and curses of this film is we should be examining why we do things, right? Like M created a weapon that is now being used against them. And that's such a government thing to do. Like,
yeah,
you know, we're gonna be architects of our own destruction. That's so perfectly like encapsulates our attitudes towards warfare. You know, we're gonna go punch this guy so that he doesn't punch us, which of course just begets more punching. Like violence rarely, you know, stops with that. And so now you have a government who's creating this nanobot technology that spreads and infects everyone and touches in order to target one very specific person, but now it's being manipulated. It got into the wrong hands, as most things usually do in life, and it's going to be used against us. And I could never have predicted this. Like, everyone was so trustworthy a minute ago. Like, what happened? Like, yeah. And so I find it just there's a certain amount of, I don't know, irony in constructing such a clear-eyed problem and then kind of fumbling on the motivations of using that and perverting that very clear-eyed problem to your advantage by the villain. And so that's just, I don't know, kind of humorous to me that they could so strongly construct the issue without like landing that plane. And so, yeah, I don't know, that it bothered me a little bit, but I think largely because of how much they are building this around the emotional journey of James Bond. It didn't ultimately ruin the movie for me. It made me scratch my head a little bit here and there, but because I was still so emotionally invested in his journey, I definitely went with it. Like it didn't pull me out altogether. But whenever you kind of look at this from the 50-foot view, you're just like, why are we running around? Like we're doing a lot of busy work without, I don't know, the clearest of understanding of what's underpinning it all. Like I understand what ultimately sets this journey off, right? It's getting this Russian scientist, and then he escapes, and that, you know, begets a whole chain of events that culminates with Bond dying. Cool, I get that. But I mean, that aside, it's still really good, and it largely comes right back down to what set this whole thing into motion in the first place with James Bond, this version of James Bond in Casino Royale. And so I think part of my issue too is it was hard to follow some of the other aspects of the story. I didn't really understand Madeleine. I know who she is in relation to Bond, but I couldn't remember who she is in relation to Spectre, and all of that. And so I suspect this is an excellent series if you were to watch it over the course of like 1 or 2 weeks, right? And you're coming fresh off of Skyfall and Spectre, and especially the first one. And I bet you could even watch Casino Royale, Spectre, and this one and have a very complete idea of this story. But I just didn't have time. We covered Casino Royale not too distantly, and then I managed to watch Quantum of Solace, but I didn't have time to watch Skyfall or Spectre. And so I was like, I know this stuff has answers already out there, and I bet I would be rewarded for all that. And so that makes it a little bit more fuzzy whenever people are throwing names around. Luckily, because we did cover Casino Royale, like I knew who Vesper was. And so when they're talking about Vesper, I'm like, oh yeah. If I hadn't watched that recently, I don't know that I would remember Vesper was, the love interest in the first one, because Vesper is such a cool name. It sounds like a code name for a bad guy.
Yeah. It was.
Well, true, fair enough. But I'd imagine like a dude with a scar on his face.
Yes, no, I get it.
It's like I would have been lost. Whereas thankfully I knew, that's Eva Green's character. And I understood what that meant to him. And so I loved that Vesper still loomed really large over the story and him specifically. And so did that add an extra layer to you, or were you kind of indifferent to Vesper still being a character on the 5th film, like so many episodes later?
It 100% did. I loved it. And that's another reason why I love this film, is because I feel like they closed a bunch of loops. They closed some loops that needed to be closed, and they allowed some to open. And Vesper was when okay, I don't want to give away other films,
sure. Yeah.
But like when that whatever happened to Vesper, it was a massive thing for me as a viewer. I felt broken when that happened for him. That was probably one of the most visceral scenes in any Bond film that I've seen, to be honest. And so it wasn't just closure for Bond; it was closure for me as a lover of this James Bond, right? As a someone who wants peace for this man. I want this guy to be able to either let her go or to slow down and stop and live his life, which is what he wants.
Yeah.
And to open it up with the idea that he is going to let her go, and that his new love understands that needs to happen, was just very beautiful. And it really made me love Madeleine for being so understanding and so patient with him, right? Because you can tell that she cares for him.
Yeah.
So when we think that she is double crossing him, we're like, shit, again? Really? You know how to pick them, James, And so, yes, I absolutely loved it. Totally didn't expect the explosion at all. I was waiting for something to happen, and then the credits after, after that whole scene,
Yeah.
I was like, whoa, this is cool. Okay. This is setting the stage for what we should expect moving forward. And there was just enough of that. Yes, I loved it, to answer your question. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like, that was the one thing I really loved about this was I feel like, and I haven't seen every James Bond film. Like I started watching them with Pierce Brosnan. But from what I understand, all the Bonds are largely kind of campy, right? They're just kind of silly, fun. Like, he's debonair, he's the womanizer, and he makes silly remarks as he kills bad guys, and he never breaks a sweat, all that kind of stuff, which is fine. Like, but it never caught me. Like, I've never seen any other Bond. I never saw Connery. I never saw Roger Moore, and whatever other Bonds there are. And Pierce Brosnan was fine. I mean, he looked good in a tuxedo, I guess, but it just didn't really appeal to me. I kind of like gritty stuff. And so when Daniel Craig burst on the scene, it's really cool. But from what I understand, this is the first time we've seen the beginning and end of a Bond. Definitely no Bonds have died before. But if you come into this knowing that, this is going to be the last one of Daniel Craig, we got to see Bond become a 007, a 00 agent. Like, why not give him an arc? And why not kill off some characters? Right? Let's kill off Felix. Why not? It's great emotional ammo to fuel Bond. It creates some nice loops that we can begin closing because Felix was introduced through Casino Royale, and now he can be here at the end. And they have this little great exchange, right? Felix says to him as he's dying, right, "It's a good life, isn't it?" And Bond replies, "The best," and then he's gone. And then we also have this nice little loop with Vesper, who, it's such a cool idea. And I didn't think they were going to do this, before watching this movie. But Vesper took his legacy in a sense, right? She left him destroyed emotionally and physically. He was unable to reproduce. Like, he got his manhood destroyed, in literal and symbolic ways, right? And because, yeah, okay, he probably can't have kids ever again, is what the doctors, tell him. But after that, he's also unable to love or trust again. It's all symbolically tied into, his ability to reproduce. And so we introduce Madeleine, and she returns all that. And I love your point. Her love acknowledged Vesper's place in Bond's life without jealousy or resentment. That's really cool. What a good, complete, wholesome love. Like, heck yeah. And so from that aspect, I definitely loved it. I loved, the emotional journey, I guess, that we got to send him through. I just wish I'd had time to go and rewatch the entire series to really appreciate what they built. Because without that, there's names thrown around and things hinted at and implied that I'm just like, I don't know what you're talking about, but it sounds important. And so I guess that's my only reservation is they did too good of a job. Like, this plays much better episodically like a TV show, in the sense that you kind of need a recap to really understand what the episode contains and what they're addressing. But Madeleine as a character is, I think, really good. I love that she's not a damsel, right? Even in the beginning, she took care of her mom, and you can see her cleaning up after her, feeding her, and her mom just struggled with what was it, alcohol that she was taking, or maybe drugs, I can't remember, but you can sense as an afterthought the way they don't directly spell it out, which is, again, things that we love, but she becomes a psychotherapist, right? When we meet her later in, she's a psychotherapist, and so she's not a victim. She took control of her life and used her own issues in order to help others. That's very cool. What a great, well-constructed, thoughtful character to create. And even in that opening scene, just to go back to she's not a damsel, whenever it comes time for her to defend herself, she does not hesitate, man. She blazes Safin down in that opening scene. She is a complete badass. And then even when she just gets dropped into the water, there's this great underwater stunt. I don't know how they do that. Like, I really don't know how they shot that sequence, because you have a little girl sitting under the ice, and I don't know if that's like, we're going to shoot this in a pool and match it with visual effects, or if they really found a badass little girl who could do this kind of stunt, or maybe they had a stunt double and they CGI'd her face onto it. I have zero idea how they accomplished it, but to me, to my eye, it looked practical.
Yes, it did.
And so I'm just in awe. But of course, in order to make sure we understand who she is, they do this great match cut of her coming up from that shot into fast forward, the present day, and they match cut to Madeleine as an adult, Lea Seydoux, tying that character together perfectly. So you understand that's her. That's what she's been through in her past. Simple. It's always the simple little things that, tell the easiest story for the viewer to understand. And then later, sorry, go ahead. And then later in the forest, like, she's mowing dudes down, protecting her and her daughter. Like, oh, I love it. No hesitation, like nailing them. One bullet per man, please. Like,
pretty much. And that's the kind of thing that you have to dismiss in a Bond film. Yeah. That's what I was talking about earlier. You're going to have 100 guys shooting at you. All of them will miss. Maybe one will graze you, but then you'll shoot once and you'll kill them. Yeah. I think you kind of want that. It's okay. Yeah, I'm all right with that. I know what I'm getting going into that.
Yes.
Just to clarify for a second, when I said earlier about Felix dying for bringing this guy in, I meant Logan Ash. I meant the mole, essentially. Gotcha. That's the reason he had to die. He brought Logan in. Logan was the mole, so he had to die for that. There was a cost for that. So
yeah, good point. Yeah. Good point. As far as Bond women as well, you mentioned Ana de Armas playing Paloma, the Cuban secret agent. God, she's good, man. And what I really loved about her, all the women in here are not just carbon copies of each other. They're all their own person, which is not always accomplished in action films, let alone in a lot of movies in the past in general. And Paloma stands on her own as well, because she's the most 007 in this entire film. More than Bond, I think she's more 007, because Bond himself does not flirt. He's kind of out of the game. Like, he's not interested in love, romance. So he doesn't really even brush it. And if you're going to flirt with someone, it's hard to get much better than Ana de Armas. Like, she's just a smoke show. And there's an opportunity for it. Like, Bond is changing, right? And she's watching him undressed, and he gets uncomfortable. And he's like, she's like, oh yeah, sorry. She turns around, and so he can change into, his tux.
He tells her to turn around.
Yeah. Is that what it is? He tells her,
Yes.
like, do you mind spinning, please?
Yeah.
And it's perfect, because he's being very unbond, but in some senses, but she's very Bond-like. She's a badass, right? She's flirty. She's charming. She's brash. She handles her liquor, right? She knocks down a martini in one go. And then she's also incredibly skilled at what she does. She sees opportunities, right? There's that moment when she sees the guy trying to escape, and she's like, oh, he's on the scaffolding. Well, this car's got to go. And like, she wrecks the car. There's that scene in the club, where it almost is a spitting image of the first James Bond, Casino Royale, where he scrambles for a gun and like pops off 3 bullets and takes out 3 guys, from his back on the floor. And she does nearly the exact same thing. Like, she spins around and just grabs the gun, and in a flourish, pop, pop, pop. Like, it's a great action sequence. And so Paloma is hardcore. Ana de Armas absolutely owned it, and she has this kind of innocent naivete to her that you think, is she really up to the task? And she's downplaying how good she is all the time.
That's the other thing that I loved about this film. I feel like there's just enough, and in a lot of these Bond films, there's just enough like comedic relief to like humanize these people. I mean, she's like, yeah, I've had 3 weeks of training. And he looks at her like, 3 weeks? I'm a fast learner, something like that. There's a few of those throughout, or like Bond addressing M. It's definitely the desk,
Yeah.
or it's definitely not the desk, or whatever it is. The desk is the same size.
Yeah.
Things like that are just they bring down the stress a little bit, so that when the stress goes back up, it feels that much bigger. It's like it's so great. And casting Ana de Armas in that role to be this, like innocent feeling person, but then just badass, is really, really awesome. And I loved Lashonda Lynch as was it Naomi?
Nomi,
007? Yeah. I loved her. I totally bought it. And I thought that it was great casting.
Mm-hmm.
I love not only that it was a woman, but an African-American woman. Like, why not?
Yeah.
Like, let's make it, let's branch out. It's always been these white males playing this 007 role.
Yeah.
Let's go complete other direction. And it completely worked. I mean, she owned it. And I loved the moment where she said that she's going with him at the end, and he with Bond, and Bond said, thank you, 007. It was just, it was such a wonderful moment, and then towards the end, when they get in the boat and she says, I got them, just to give him the little sense of they're going to be okay. It's just so wonderful. And she just owned those lines. They're small lines, but they're so important. Like, they're literally handing off this entire world to a new character. So if you botch a single word, then it just falls flat. She owned it.
Totally. And this is a funny, I think you'll find this humorous, but I don't think she's African American, because she's British.
Oh, yeah?
So I think she's just black. Like,
Oh, got it. No,
yeah,
yeah.
you know,
How would I know?
No,
Yeah.
I just think that's hilarious that, you know, in America, that's, you know, the PC way to discuss race.
Oh, right.
But yeah, over there, because she's literally not
You're
American.
right. You're totally right. You're totally right.
But it's synonymous in our minds. And that's the way anyway, I just think that's hilarious.
Why would we think any other way, right?
Yeah, exactly.
'Cause I'm small white male.
Yeah. I'll blast through a few notes here, and then I have some more questions for Lay Todd. But I like story and writing wise, the resourcefulness of Bond. Every one of these films is, you know, plays on this, and here is no different. Because you want to make Bond more than a button pusher with gadgets, right? He has all the cool toys from Q, and rarely does he use them the way they're intended. Usually the fun is seeing the genius way that he perverts the technology to his own ends. But even beyond the technology, you don't want him just a button pusher. Like, you need to make him strong, but most importantly, you want to make him smarter than his opponent. And it always comes down to action films like this work best when you have smart villains and smarter heroes. I think that's ultimately what makes a film like this very satisfying, because there's only so far you can make something go when it's just strength versus strength. Like, who can lift a bigger rock is rarely going to be interesting. But who can think of a better way to use the rock is going to be very satisfying to a viewer, because now you're trying to outsmart the viewer as much as you're trying to paint a picture of how smart the hero is. You want to set the viewer up for one thing and deliver something else. And it's that contrast, that contradiction, that makes something very satisfying for the roller coaster ride, I think. And the way they do it in this film, here's a couple of ways, but Bond uses his surroundings very well. And on the bridge at the beginning, after he visits Vesper's grave, you know, the explosion, and he's running, trying to dodge the motorcyclist, and then there's a car that meets him on the bridge, and he's about to get flattened, right? He ducks behind like a rock on the bridge that's built into the bridge, and the car, of course, is unable to move the rock, the boulder, and I don't know if it flips or if it just keeps going or whatever, but it's that quick acknowledge, like, because we see him caught dead flat-footed, and he's like, is he going to jump over the bridge again? No. Oh, smart. Like, he understands physics. Right? And so simple little thing like that. And then in the forest later on, I love that he uses that crashed Jeep's towing cable to create like a trip line for the motorcyclist, right? He laps it around a tree and sets off his gun or whatever, calls for it, and it's just baiting the motorcyclist to, you know, basically kill himself on the tripwire. And then similar, just a moment later, he uses a fallen tree to wreck Ash's Jeep, which ultimately gets Ash killed. And that's just a little fun, satisfying. You could see these things within the scene and maybe piece together what he's doing as he's doing it. Smart. I like little touches, little flourishes.
Yeah, I mean, that's what makes Bond, is that he sees the things in his surroundings that we, you know, in hindsight saw.
Yeah.
But didn't in the moment. And which makes us feel like, man, I wonder if I could have done that. Or okay, the next time I'm in a scenario where I'm being chased by guys with machine guns on motorcycles, yeah, I'm definitely going to do that. You know, whatever. You know, just see your surroundings different, because they're not inhuman things.
Mm-hmm.
They're very human things that you can notice if you have the training, or you pay attention more, or you know, whatever, very spy-like things.
Yeah.
You know, yeah,
I love that.
Good point.
Let's talk about summoning characters and red herrings. So whenever I say summoning a character, it's not just, hey, can Charlie get in here? And, you know, he walks into the room. I'm speaking more, whenever I think of the thing I'm trying to describe, I think of it like a spell. Like, in one scene, you're talking about, you know, there's only one person that's right for this job. Cut to Billy steps out of a car, you know? And so in that way, you're creating an incantation that's summoning someone onto the screen by just invoking them. You're asking a question, or you're making an implication, and then you cut to the answer to that question. And I think of it like, oh, they're building this thing up. here we go. We're about to introduce a new character. And so, yeah, summoning a character is the way I kind of phrase that in my head. I don't know if there's an actual good screenwriting term for that. There probably is, and I'm just a doofus, but I think mine's fun. So
I like it.
And so we see that happen early in the film whenever M, I think, is talking to Bond, and he's like, you need to get in to see Blofeld. And he's like, fine, let's go. He's like, well, here's the problem. There's only one person who has access to see Blofeld. Cut to, and then we jump straight to Madeleine. She's entering her building, her office, right? That's a summoning spell to me. And so they have a meeting. She has a meeting. She walks in. She has this first encounter with Safin, or so we think. And he, of course, is revealed to be the baddie that she met in her childhood. And he's threatening to kill someone she cares about. And she says, there's no one that I care about that you can hurt. And he's like, I don't think that's true, right? He says something to that effect. And then we cut to James Bond. And so I love this because it's a total fake out. They're using the summoning idea against the audience because they're inserting into her mind that Safin is talking about Bond. But in actuality, he's referring to her yet to be revealed daughter. Mm-hmm. And so the first summoning implication is true, that the only person who has access to Blofeld is indeed Madeleine, which lays the trap to deceive or, play with the audience a little bit about Bond, with the second implication that the person Safin is threatening is him, when in fact it's her daughter. And so very simple thing. And in regards to Mathilde, her daughter, which apparently is named after her mother, by the way, like her mom's name was Mathilde, which I only noticed in the credits. Maybe it was in the film somehow, but I only saw it in the credits. So that's a really endearing thing that she cared about her mom, loved her enough to continue her name, even though, she wasn't great, but she was also murdered in front of her. And so she's not running from her past, I think, is kind of the important point that they're emphasizing. But there's this great setup and payoff that they use with her daughter, which is the eyes, right? The setup is that Bond sees her and implies that she has his eyes. And of course, Madeleine's like, she's not yours. He's like, yeah, but the eyes. She's not yours. He's like, I know. Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah.
And it creates doubt in the viewer's mind, right? That maybe it's not his daughter. That would have been cool though. But is it? I don't know. And so there's this unease or question in their mind that stays until Bond's last dying moment. And they resolve it in one sentence, in one exchange of dialogue over the walkie-talkie. Like, she's got your eyes. And he says, I know. And it's great. It managed to solidify Bond as a father and has a legacy, which is a bit of a salve for the sacrifice he's about to make. We still feel like we have a piece of Bond in the world. That's pretty cool. And speaking about his sacrifice, it's so good. I think they did a great job of making it a sacrifice that was vital to the story, not just a sacrifice out of laziness or, emotional manipulation. But it was very crucial to make, they made it very critical for the story to work, because on the one hand, James Bond is riddled with bullets. He's been like blasted up. So his life is already kind of like barely hanging on. He's also out of time, right? He needs to open the blast doors to ensure the weapons factory is destroyed. And even if all those things were not true, he himself is in imminent danger to the ones he loves most because he's infected. And so they kind of give you 3 or 4 reasons that he should die, which is, ticks off all the boxes, like, well, maybe, nope, in every way that you want him to work it out. He just can't. And so on those levels it works, but we also know that he doesn't regret it, which was kind of built in earlier with his interaction with Felix, right? This is the best life. It's a life that he loves. And there are no regrets. And they, of course, built in some cues earlier to prepare the audience, right? The Russian scientist is saying, hey, this is a suicide mission. You're not going to survive, right? They kind of start building in those little breadcrumbs to say, oh, maybe not. And even at the beginning of the film, right, there's that line that he tells her, hey, I'm in no rush. We have all the time in the world, right? And at the end, he's telling her, you have all the time in the world. Like, no rush. So I think it works in every way we really need it to work. It's a good emotional resolution. And then, of course, we get the story at the end. Let me tell you about your dad.
Yeah.
Fade off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And him on the roof when she was, when they were talking on the walkie-talkie, I felt like was a goodbye to us also from Daniel Craig, you know, that you have all the time in the world was, you know, maybe a little message to us too. Like, go use it. Use your days that you have left. Use your time that you have left. That's how I felt. That's how I felt. Because I just knew it was coming, you know, I didn't know at the start of the movie that he would die. I think I kind of hoped that he would. It sounds morbid, but what other better way to end Bond? I mean, end this kind of Bond, you know, like a Pierce Brosnan Bond, or if you wanted to end that, or any other Bond, I feel like might have been like, oh, he finds a way to live happily ever after. Not this guy, you know? And so I kind of hoped for it or whatever, but halfway through I was like, no, this dude, especially when they were going to an island, I was like, this dude is not making it out. No way.
Yeah.
But yeah, when he's like climbing up to the roof, I thought, oh my gosh, we're gonna get this send off, and we totally got it. I have, you know, this is what I mean about how good Daniel Craig is as Bond, is that those lines delivered. I was choked up. I was getting choked up by his getting choked up by a James Bond performance. Like that doesn't happen. You know, they're not emotional. They're either funny or they're aggressive. But they're not like super emotional because he's had that beaten out of him. Right. But either by, you know, the government, or by his life choices and the women around him, or by just, you know, the people that he surrounds himself by who are always trying to kill him constantly. But him to completely let all of that go and to be a real person, and we get to see that real person completely vulnerable, was wonderful. It was my favorite moment of any Bond, honestly. I absolutely adored it. And you know who composed the music for this film? Hans Zimmer. Yeah, I mean, you know, Billie Eilish wrote the main theme,
right, yeah,
you know, but the music Hans did, which I thought was awesome. Thought it was flawless, because I didn't notice it unless unless it was necessary, and you know, it had the typical motifs that you would expect in a Bond film. You know,
that's pretty cool. There were a few kind of clunky moments that I was like, oh, I don't know.
Tell me.
So the first one that popped out was his moment in the prison with Blofeld. I knew they were trying to create an excuse for him to touch Blofeld, and so I thought the whole him getting upset felt forced. It was just a strained excuse to make physical contact. I think, and I get it, man. That's hard because you want to see some emotion come out of him, and I don't know. It just didn't work for me. I might have experimented a little bit more, and maybe they did, and this just was the one that felt the best, I guess. But to me, I might have inverted it a little bit and tried to create an excuse for Blofeld to touch him instead. I think that could have worked a little bit stronger. But we knew what we were expecting to see, like he's going to get infected with this disease, and the nanobots, the Heracles, and we're going to see how it operates. That was the whole point of that section. And it was to see the Safin's plan work. Except I don't know. It just felt clunky to me. Similar, later in the film when Bond is in the room weaponless before Safin, he's doing this whole apologetic bow as an excuse to reach in and get his gun. And so that felt strained as well. It just, I don't know, didn't click. I thought that might have been a good time to have one of his gadgets, a new gadget, be used in some distorted way to help him escape that scenario. Well, in a similar way that he used the EMP watch to kill Cyclops. Like, I thought maybe this is another opportunity that could have introduced some other tech that he suddenly, like, whatever, used to blind a few people or something. I don't know. That one didn't quite click for me either. And those are, I think, important moments. And I think you can have clunky moments. You want to try to avoid them in the moments that are really significant, or turning moments. And then in a similar but slightly different way, I thought it was a little clunky that Safin just kind of randomly releases Mathilde. Like, she like bites him or kicks him in the shin or something. He's like, yeah, get out of here, kid. And I'm like, wait, what? Why? Like, you made a big deal about getting this little girl, and now you're just like, yeah, they'll figure it out. Like, all right. I mean, it just, I don't know, that felt a little hollow.
Totally agree. All those moments.
Yeah, like, ultimately, because we were so invested in the story and Bond, we overlooked those things, willingly. But it was just one of those things where I'm like, was there another way to go about this? Maybe, but I guess whatever. Things happen. You can't win them all.
That did feel very weird. The other two moments, yeah, I can see that for sure. I think I just forgave them, but yeah, those were clunky, but especially him just letting her go. I think he thought he was letting her just go to her death. He didn't think that she was gonna get off the island, but still, like, it should have. I just feel like, that was kind of like an overlooked moment of maybe she's smart enough. We can show her smarts of like how to get away from him, her own way, when even Bond couldn't get her, or something like that. It would have been there was an opportunity missed for sure.
Yeah. Instead, it's just kind of this arbitrary decision that comes out of left field. But yeah, I mean, overall, it's hard to not like this movie. I'm really excited to like take a moment and actually go through all the films and see how they all line up and play alongside each other. Yeah.
One other clunky moment that it wasn't really a moment. It was just a thing that bothered me a little bit was M acknowledges that it's on him if stuff goes wrong with this, but then shit did go wrong and
true.
Like way wrong. Bond is dead and he doesn't like resign or have anything bad happen to him. I just felt like that was wrong. Like, you are not allowed to toast to James. This is your fault. So you need to have something needs to happen to you. And maybe that, because if you stuck around for the end of the credits, it says at the end of the credits, Bond will be back. So maybe it's something for the next version of whatever James Bond would be. Maybe they'll, like, M will have some kind of, I don't know, retribution. I don't know.
That's a good point. Yeah. And just to flesh out M a little bit more too, or at least the idea of him screwing up in a multitude of ways. I like that the bunker was an old nuclear silo. I feel like they were tying together those ideas of what our governments, that's plural. It's not just America, like Russia, South Korea, or North Korea, like a lot of governments have been playing with fire when it comes to nuclear weapons. And I feel like they were playing around with that idea, using the bunker as kind of a symbolic idea, that Heracles is representative of a lot of these ideas of governmental missteps. And I love the point you're making about M does not have the right to toast Bond. Absolutely right. You got this guy killed. Don't pretend to pay him his proper respect whenever, this is on you. The blood is on your hands, and you don't get to alleviate it by simply wishing him the best. Like, get out of here.
Yeah, and nobody around him is mad at him about it either. The Bill Tanner isn't mad at him, but Moneypenny isn't mad at him. Like,
what?
They don't say anything.
Yeah. I wonder if that's because he's done otherwise a really good job of keeping secret why everything happened. Like, how much do all these other people know about the background of Heracles? Because
they know everything because they were in the room when he was being called out, and right? Like I know Tanner was for
Was
sure.
he? Okay.
For sure. Like at least some people in that room knew
Yeah.
that M was the impetus behind Heracles.
Gotcha.
At least some of them did. And
Yeah.
I venture to say that all of them did.
Yeah.
But at least Tanner, and I'm pretty sure Moneypenny, and definitely Q. I mean, Q knows everything.
True.
So why nobody said anything? Even if he didn't, even if M didn't resign, somebody to acknowledge this is your fault, would have felt good.
So where do you want to see the future of Bond go? From what I understand, talking to Ricky, he's watched all these movies and he was like, they often tie Bonds together through casting choices of let's keep M the same, right? He was saying Judi Dench as M was the same for Brosnan. And then we've had M's kind of overlap Bonds throughout the history. And so I'm curious, do you want to see Bond continue in this same world, or would you like to see a reset of the world and a new James Bond? Because obviously if you stay in this world, we can't have James Bond. We're just going to have a new 007. And yeah, we can start there. Do you want to see this world stay the same or reset the world?
I mean, a reset.
Yeah.
100%. You can't, I think they could do it either, honestly. If you're creative, you can do either. You can hand the baton off to Nomi or and she could follow James, and then you don't have a James Bond. You have, a new 007. And that could be the new world, and it could new world. It would be the same world, but just, continue. But I feel like the stakes have been raised and raised and raised and elevated, and in order to tell the story, I think you kind of need to tell a new story with new everything. I don't think that anybody can really follow Daniel Craig in the same world in a better way.
Yeah.
Of course, this is just me, not being creative enough to think outside the box in order to do it in this moment. But so could it be done? Sure. But I think it would feel better. It would feel like a better homage to Daniel Craig and to this world that they have built with James Bond to recreate a new world like they do with every new Bond. Yes, M might stay the same, but it's still, the things around it are different. When Daniel took over, he wasn't even 007 at the time. He was trying to get to that, right? It was a new world in that, even if M was the same and, it was still the British Secret Service, it was a different world from like Pierce, or I think he was the Bond that came before. I can't remember.
Yeah.
And I think each time it's been a little bit different, and even if it just feels different, right? There was a lot more struggle with Daniel's James Bond in the beginning, to get to the level, to get to the commander, right? And so whatever this next 007 is, I think it needs a new world in order to develop that.
That's smart.
I don't know, just my thought.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I agree with that. You don't want to chase Daniel Craig in this universe. Like you should reset. And I just double checked through our good friend Joe House's site, Cinematlis. I was just curious how many films Judi Dench and Pierce Brosnan were in together, and she was indeed the previous in all the Tomorrow Never Dies, Die Another Day, World Is Not Enough. She was in like a lot of those. And so, yeah, keeping that idea, Ray Fiennes playing the next M, gives you enough carryover. And I agree. I would want to see a reset. And preferably I would like to see the same gritty style. I think they're going to have to decide if they want to stay in this realm or do a massive tone switch a la Kingsman, right? Where it's just kind of going back to the suave, effortless style of Bond. I gravitate more towards this kind of content, and this has paid dividends. So I'm hoping they'll stick with this. Do you feel the same way on that?
Oh, totally. You can't go back.
Yeah.
You can't go back. It's yeah. You can't go back. You got to stay real world, and I think the reason why I agree with you is because of that final scene that he had.
Mm-hmm.
And because of the oneer that they did right before it. I mean, can we talk about that for a second?
Sure, man.
How beautiful that was. It was so beautiful that I noticed it. If that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
It was like they took, and you said it really well earlier when you talk about the effortlessness. It feels like all the Bonds before, and even some of the some moments in the Daniel Craig Bonds, where just everything seems like to be so easy, and then to do a oneer towards the end of this to show how difficult he is having, not just, as an actor, but as a character, the difficulty that he's having to go through, go through all these guys and getting blown up and the door saving his life. 'Cause, when the grenade goes off and it blows him back and he's in a stairwell, the door saves his life, and, things like that happen. But he's stunned and he's, just barely getting up, and he gets a shot off to save. And then he doesn't even hit his watch to kill Cyclops. It was an accident. I think that Cyclops might have hit it. He didn't do it on purpose.
Oh.
And he was shocked when it happened. He just had him in a headlock, and it was close to his eye. And so it blew his eye up, but it was like an accident. And so just these things are happening, but it's all, most of it. And I think there was one point when he started fighting Cyclops where there was a cutaway, and you could kind of tell because it came across the camera. But
yeah, I assume there was a camera wipe whenever he kind of gets backed into the camera, and so that looked like an opportunity to set up for the big stunt, which was flying down the stairs. They do this big jump, and that's when we do an actual hard cut. But to the casual viewer's eye, it might look like one continuous thing because you can't. Yeah. You don't really notice the camera wipe like that, which is why it's there.
Right.
Yeah.
But it was just so wonderful to see all the effort having to be put in towards the end in order to make this happen and to survive, to save everything, to save not just his family, but the whole world, essentially. How can you go back to it being easy for anyone after that?
Right.
I mean, it would feel fake and terrible to do that. I think that you need to double down now, and for it to be even harder moving forward, right?
Yeah, I love it. How would you feel, and I think you've already answered this indirectly, but Bond as a woman, would you welcome a Janet Bond?
Oh, please. Yeah, I would love it. I would absolutely love it. It would add special new wrinkles that you couldn't get with a male Bond. It would add new abilities that could happen that wouldn't pay off with a male Bond. It would give her more. It would give the character less power and more power in certain ways. Would be very fun to use and exploit. They would. I think that a female would have plenty of things that you could play on. That a bad guy or bad woman could play on that they couldn't with a male, and that would be wonderful. It would.
I completely agree. My big asterisk would be make sure you keep her Bond. Don't suddenly turn her into something else, right? Bond is misogynist, so make her a manonizer or whatever you would call that. She should still be exploiting, her sexuality to her benefit in order to get the things that she wants. She should still like drinking and have a liver fighting cirrhosis, and she should still be everything. Paloma was like charming, charismatic, wry, and way more than capable. I would want to see her still remain a Bond, and if you're not going to do that, then just don't do it. But yeah, I would be more than game for that. And that aside, assuming that they probably keep it as a dude, do you have anyone on your dream list? Any Brits? Because that's the other thing, right? They need to be from the UK, some form or fashion. I think, Sean Connery was, technically Scottish, but it's all kind of under the same umbrella. Do you have anyone that you've thought of? I mean, obviously Tom Hardy wouldn't upset you.
Oh my God. No, originally, I think years ago, you might have brought it up, but, and I think he's too old now, but, who is it you were suggesting?
Idris Elba.
Idris. I loved that. I was like, oh, please. But yeah, I think he's, past the age of like.
I agree. Because this whole thing spanned almost 17 years between the first and this one, 5 films. Like you do need someone that's, in their early 30s, or early to mid 30s, I think, if you're going to, try to get another 10, 15 years out of this thing. But I think for me, I agree. Idris is probably, on the wrong side of that, but I think Daniel Kaluuya could do an incredible job. He's got the physique, he's got the suave, debonair thing. He's a Brit, and he's got the range. Like he could do some pretty magical things. And if you're not going to do that, I think Tom Hardy he might still be on the upper end of the age range, but I think he could still probably live in that world just long enough to squeeze out, 3 to 4 of these and create something badass. Beyond that, I don't think there's anybody on my list that I would be like, oh, they're the right choice.
I don't know. This is going to sound weird, but I don't know that I'd like to see Tom Hardy as Bond.
Ooh, really?
When I picture Tom Hardy, I picture dirty and raw, which I guess maybe could work, as like a New World kind of Bond, but picturing him in like these suits and just proper, doesn't.
His accent is a little slurry, right? He's not good on his diction, enunciation. So
yeah, I don't know.
So you're more of a Tom Hardley. Got it.
I mean, I think that he could do it and he could pull it off, and it would be amazing because he's one of my favorite actors for sure. Yeah, both of our favorite actors. But but yeah, I don't know. It would be nice to have a new face. Maybe not somebody that like the world knows yet necessarily, and I don't know. Maybe give an opportunity to a woman, but I don't have anybody in mind. I don't know. I'm just going to let it happen.
Yeah.
I'm not going to make it. So
just do it well, which from what I was told, like the same family has been producing these from the beginning. Like they kind of pass baton within the family, which, is why you're able to, I guess, have this series be its own thing. Like that's a pretty cool.
That's cool. I did not know that. That's awesome.
Same. I guess the last thing I would want to point out, you don't know, screenplay by Neal Purvis and Robert Wade and Cary Joji Fukunaga and Phoebe Waller-Bridge. Like you don't normally see that many credits on a screenplay. The WGA is normally very strict about how many people can get official credit for a script. And so I found it really interesting that they allowed, effectively 3 teams to take credit, because normally they kind of max out around 2. And the way you can kind of tell who's a team and not is the way they use the ampersand. The ampersand in the credits denotes they were responsible for one draft or drafts and working together through the script. And so Neal Purvis and Robert Wade are one team. And then Cary Joji Fukunaga did his own thing, and Phoebe Waller-Bridge did her own thing. And the stacking order is important as well, because the people at the top are credited with having done the most work, probably through arbitration. And that's a whole kind of mystic process that the WGA does. But theoretically, you should be able to slice up the script and say, they wrote this part, they wrote this part. And it gets very weird from what I understand. Not that I've ever, gone through arbitration, since I'm not in the WGA. But it just sounds like a very fluky, we say so kind of thing. And I just found it interesting. And I love the inclusion of Phoebe Waller-Bridge because she is responsible for Killing Eve, which I'm sure people have heard me discuss 3 or 4 times now on the show with Jodie Comer and Sandra Oh. But it's all about spy work and spycraft and largely featuring women. And so I think it makes a lot of sense that they brought her in at, probably towards the end of the process to either punch up dialogue. If you've seen her show, Fleabag on Amazon Prime, she's an incredible writer. But if you've also watched, and capable of witty, really smart dialogue on Fleabag, but if you combine that with what she's done on Killing Eve, you're like, she is a shoo-in for James Bond. It would be stupid to not bring her in to at least look over your script and punch up, if not some of the women, all the dialogue. Like, I bet she had a lot of influence on tweaking and working through the dialogue and saying, hey, instead of this, make this, character do this. And so I think it's really cool that they brought her in. And I always love seeing a director's name in the script credits because, they understand what they're trying to do. And Cary Fukunaga, if you're not aware, was responsible for the first season of True Detective, which
the best one.
Yep, absolutely. And so very cool to see so many people get credit for their work. I'm a big fan of such things. Anywho, so Toddies, what are you going to recommend this week?
Okay, cool. So this week, I've been wanting to see this for a while and I haven't. Until this week, and then I texted you after it to see what you thought, and not knowing what you thought, but I loved it. I'm gonna recommend Free Guy, the new Ryan Reynolds film, which has nothing to do with Bond, I know, but I kind of don't care because I it was a little aggressive, but I watched it with my son who loved it and laughed hard in some really great moments. And I was rolling in some moments too. And I just thought it was really smart and heartfelt and in a lot of places and surprise, I had heard that it was pretty good, but I didn't, I just never got the chance to see it in theater. So I watched it on Apple a couple nights ago and I really enjoyed it. I recommend Free Guy.
Badass. I'll co-sign that. That pleasantly surprised me as well. I caught it in theater on a big movie day with my mom. And awesome. I was like, whoa, this is actually, really well done. So I'm going to recommend another Ralph Fiennes movie. Ralph Fiennes. If you want some more of him and you want to stay and hang around in Britain with their espionage and politics, there's a true story. It's called Official Secrets. And it's all about how the British government lied to their own people to get us into the war in Iraq in 2003. And it tells a story of a woman who was a whistleblower and maybe one of the only people in history that I'm aware of that actually had the chance to prevent war and, did her best to get the truth out there ahead of time, ahead of the war. And she paid a pretty high price. And so I think that's streaming on Netflix, if I'm not mistaken. It's streaming somewhere. And so if you want to dive back into real world stuff and real consequences, I really like that Ralph Fiennes did both this and Bond, and doing very similar storylines in both. So check that out, Official Secrets. And so stay tuned next week. We are going to cover season 2 of Ted Lasso. And so, go watch it and tune in. That's on Apple TV Plus, if you're not aware. And if you're enjoying the show, don't forget to subscribe, drop us a review, and leave us a note if you want us to cover a film or a topic or, wave on camera at you. You can get all of those things and more.
Whether you ordered them or not.
Yeah, that's right. And if you want to leave a note on this episode, you can do that at thepestlepodcast.com/no time to die.
And our quote of the day is from Ian Fleming. History is moving pretty quickly these days, and the heroes and villains keep on changing parts. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's perspective, right?
It's spot on. I mean, it's hard to know who's the villain and who's the hero in some cases, you know.
Totally.
You know, a lot of it has to do with retribution. A lot of it has to do with, a lot of stuff that we don't like to hear about.
That's right. Yeah.
And there's a lot of players in the game who are doing it for wrong reasons, whether that's money or, things you can't take with you. So I think that's brilliantly said.
Nice.
A lot to chew on there.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us. Hope you enjoyed this episode of No Time to Die. Make sure to join us next week. We're doing Ted Lasso Season 2. Make sure to go watch that because there's going to be spoilers. And share us with your friends. And, review us on iTunes, wherever you get your podcasts, all that stuff. It all helps us immensely. So thank you for joining us again. Until next week, I'm Todd.
I'm Wes.
Go watch some movies. Ha ha ha.